From players like Paige Beckers and Angel Reese being eligible for an early Supermax to the Fever Dynasty potentially being over before it starts, this new CBA has some things that need to be discussed because they have implications on your favorite team. My name is Omar, and this is W's in the Chat.
W's in the chat. What they say? Toast in the chat.
You bet! Count the buckets.
Drills it. Are you kidding me?
Oh, she banked it in.
W's in the chat.
Welcome to W's in the Chat. My name is Omar, and this is a WNBA podcast where we talk about all things WNBA related. Of course, we're going to have some takes, we're going to inform, but we're also going to have fun on this channel, so please subscribe and stick around for a good time. After an unprecedented amount of negotiating hours, it is official. The new WNBA CBA has been signed, and we officially can say we are going to have a 2026 season. Woo! I know a lot of us thought that there was going to be a lockout, but yes, that means you get to see your favorite ballers on the court this summer. Now, this CBA is a kind of complex and it has some hidden implications that I don't think that people are talking about because it could impact your team's future. So I kind of want to go through those and talk about the top things that will impact your team's future from this current CBA. First, let's talk about housing. For those that don't know, the WNBA and their teams actually provide housing to the players. They either give them some sort of housing stipend or there is team provided housing. So maybe the team will buy up some neighborhoods or an apartment complex. And that was a big question going into the CBA negotiation. More money would mean that they would have to give away some of the amenities that they had, i.e. take away the housing. But I can gladly say that this CBA does include a housing clause for the players. The league will provide housing for players from 2026 through the year 2028. Then for any players making $500,000 or less from the years 2029 through the year 2030. This means that players don't have to sacrifice these newfound gains in these contracts in order to buy some sort of housing, which I know was at the top of Natasha Cloud's list going into the season.
Still not making enough, that middleman potentially still not making enough for housing to also be taken off of the table. You all know this New York market. that $200,000 jump that players are going to make, that's before taxes, that's before what they would have to pay for a potential housing market.
But this is for our family. This mama over here told me I better win today for a down payment on a house, so baby, you're gonna get that house.
I think one of the better added benefits about housing is that developmental players, which we'll get to in a minute, are always going to be provided housing under this CBA. Another amenity to note is that chartered flights have been codified in this new CBA. Before 2024, teams did not travel by chartered flights, meaning that they had to deal with commercial airlines. And if you've seen the airport right now, you know why that's a big deal. But in 2024, a major shift happened. Full chartered flight program announced, and teams everywhere were able to charter different flights without any sorts of fees attached to it. And now that has been baked into this new CBA as something that will be happening going forward. Another added benefit of the chartered flight program is that players will be able to travel first class for all league events, meaning if they go to the draft or if they go to any sort of award ceremony or celebration hosted by the league, they will no longer have to make the awkward decision of paying for an upgraded seat or sitting back there with me and coach with these cramped seats where the tray tables and my knees are touching before I even open it out. Now, I think that these improvements are big for quality of life when it comes to players and future athletes that look to participate in the WNBA. But this next rule that I'm about to announce is actually going to shift the way that players are treated and handled in this league going forward. This new CBA announced new facility standards and expanded team staffing. All those old stories that you heard of different organizations having to practice at a YMCA, have ill-equipped locker rooms, do cold plunges in trash cans are no longer going to happen. Now teams are going to be watched by the league to make sure that the facilities are up to a certain standard that is adequate enough to not be embarrassed on social media by. And there will also be an expansion of the different staffing that's on the different teams. So we're talking about physicians, nutritionists, mental health specialists, physical therapists, all the things to make this a professional organization. Some of these positions that I'm talking about are things that college teams had at big programs, but some of these WNBA franchises did not. Now, I do think that this is going to impact some of those smaller market teams, those independent teams in this league, because this is going to mean that they have to bring in a couple more dollars and a couple more cents to get these positions filled. But at the end of the day, the players' quality of life will be better. I do think in the past that teams that had these certain facilities that were at a certain standard, and all of these professionals on their team were at an advantage during free agency or made them a more viable trade destination. But now this should help in leveling the playing field for people at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to having, subpar standards when it comes to facilities and whatnot. So I'm actually pretty happy about this one. All of these things in the new CBA are something that players before have been asking for. Past players have been fighting the good fight, so players like Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, and even the Juju Watkins of the world, the Sarah Strongs of the world that will be in the league in the next few years, can live a comfortable life. And that doesn't go unnoticed. Another part of this new CBA is that retired players get some love as well. Retired players now get a one-time payment based on their years of service in this league. Retirees with 12 plus years of service will be eligible to get $100,000 in this new CBA. The league and the Players Association also negotiated that there would be life insurance benefits more than $700,000 per player, and there would be increased team contributions to the 401k. Now, this is definitely a big deal, and I know that a lot of people would say that there's still a long way to go to adequately, service those players that laid the foundation, but having this in place for your former players, for your former employees, the people that have helped build this league is very, very crucial. And I would say it's a win nonetheless. Now, I would say so far in this video, the things that I've established were like the vegetables and the sides and stuff like that when it comes to the CBA. There's so much more to cover, and I think that these next few things are going to be things that actually impact how your team looks in the future. First of all, there's been a bump in awards bonuses. For those that don't know, every time a team or a player gets some sort of accolade or accomplishment in this league, they don't just walk away with some sort of trophy and maybe a Instagram or Twitter post from the brand that they're signed to. No. They also get some sort of cash from the league itself. Last year, if you were a part of the championship Las Vegas Aces, you walked away with $22,000 in your pocket. If you were Asia Wilson, you walked away with $15,000 in your pocket for winning the league's MVP trophy. Hell, if you were an All-Star Games three-point participant, you walked away with $1,000 for just being in the game and not even winning. Well, now they've made a drastic increase in how much you can make in these different awards and these different bonuses. For winning a championship, you go from $22,000 to $60,000. MVP the same. For being a participant in the three-point contest, you go from $1,000 to $10,000. And every single award that you can name, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, making the defensive team, Sixth Woman of the Year, Most Improved Player of the Year, all of these things now have an increased financial contribution attached to them. Now, why that's important is because in free agency, if I am somebody who is looking to maximize my money, not just from the perspective of signing the contract to the team that can offer the most, but also being awarded the most, I would pick my teams wisely. I wouldn't pick a team who might be at the bottom of the totem pole or might not have the best opportunity at winning so many games or showcasing who I am as a player. I'm going to make my selections based off of where I think I can win, not just the championship, but also awards and participate in these different events around the league. Teams are now required to carry 12 players. Some teams in the past have gotten away with not carrying 12 players and had just rode into the sunset with good luck and good health and blessings and all these things. They didn't need them. But now this means that more players will get more opportunity. More players should get more rest. And we should be able to see more players stay in this league because they have to fill out roster spots. In addition to that, 2 new developmental spots have been added to each roster that don't impact the salary cap. Now, I will say the downside of having those 12 players on the roster is that this does impact the salary cap. This means that you have so much money, which we'll get into in a second, that you can delve out, but you have to figure out how to do that across 12 different players, and that can get kind of complicated. But with these 2 new additional developmental spots, that means some of your favorite college stars from yesteryear that have been bouncing in and out of the league, that are in AU, that are overseas, can see themselves playing on a WNBA team very, very soon. The cutthroatedness of training camp will lessen, and we will get to see more of our favorite players grow into being participants in the WNBA. This new CBA was groundbreaking. It introduced a bunch of different things that make the WNBA a more attractive and sexy league. Specifically for those younger players that people are so worried about their contributions to the success and growth of the league, but them still not being compensated because they will be stuck on some sort of rookie scale contract. This is where they introduced to us the new EPIC provision. EPIC standing for Exceptional Performance on Initial Contract. Now, according to ESPN, the new provision will allow players to renegotiate what would have been the 4th year of their rookie deal and agree to a 3-year contract extension. If a player was previously named to all WNBA first or second team, they can earn the maximum in that 4th year. If a player has won MVP, they can earn the supermax. Following an extension under the provision, the player would not be eligible for the core designation. Now, I think this is a nod to players like Candace Parker, Caitlin Clark, and some of the other young and up-and-coming WNBA players who we think will have an impact almost immediately from day one with their teams. Previously, in other CBAs, that 4th year was an option year where it was solely up to the club's discretion about giving them some sort of money or not. Currently in the WNBA, there are 3 players that are eligible for this epic provision. Aaliyah Boston, who was named to the All-WNBA second team in 2025, is max eligible in 2026. Caitlin Clark could earn the projected max in 2027, thanks to her being named to the All-WNBA first team in 2024, her rookie season. And Paige Beckers was named to the All-WNBA second team in 2025, her rookie season, making her eligible in 2028. Now, first of all, I think that this is a big win. Oftentimes in basketball, we have seen rookies make phenomenal contributions to their team from day one. So much so that they go into the ranks of some of the best in the league in just their rookie or sophomore seasons. But the sad part about it is that they are relegated to these contracts that don't properly compensate them in comparison to other players that are their peers across the league until their contract is up and they get their, extension or whatever the case may be. But now the fast track is starting and we get to see some of our favorites compensated properly. Round of applause. Now hold on just a minute. Fever fans across the internet are worried about how this will impact the future dynasty that they are hoping to see in Indiana. And this is where it gets interesting, so please bring out your pen and your paper. We've got to do some math. In this new CBA, we know that the salary cap is set to $7 million, which is up from $1.5 million in 2025. A round of applause for a win. I can say that. The players also negotiated an average 20% revenue share across the CBA, and the Supermax contract will be set at $1.4 million, meaning that somebody like A'ja Wilson during signing day will be set to sign a contract for $1.4 million, setting a historic precedent for the WNBA. And last but certainly not least, average salary range in the WNBA now is $600,000, and the minimum salary is just above $300,000, which is up from $66,000 in 2025. Now, I hope you wrote all that down because we need to do some team building. And let's take the Indiana Fever, for example, because they're the ones in question here. Indiana Fever fans are excited about the dynasty that they see in front of them. When all healthy, they generate some of the best, if not the best, offense in WNBA history. And when Caitlin Clark went down, the development of Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell as players was phenomenal. Getting to the semifinals and 1 game away from going to the championship, it seems as though with the addition of Caitlin Clark back with health, the Indiana Fever should be a powerhouse for years to come. But with this new CBA structure, everything that glitters isn't gold. The money comes into question. Kelsey Mitchell, who is a 3-time All-Star and made her first All-WNBA team last year, is a shoo-in for a $1 million contract. Now, with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston also presumably being $1 million contracts coming up on the Indiana Fever books, that means that $3 million of the $7 million cap would be tied up in just 3 players. Now, having that big 3 wouldn't be such a problem, but that leaves $4 million divided between 9 players to fill out the rest of Indiana's roster. I did the math, and that comes out to be about $444,000 to fill out the remaining 9 roster spots that they have, which would be below league average. This means that they're going to have to get really picky and choosy about who they fill out their roster with. And I do think last year, Indiana did some phenomenal things with finding players who weren't even in the league at the time that they gave them a ring. But I don't know if you can go forward with building out a roster like that. Now, don't get me wrong. This is also going to impact a bunch of other teams around the league. I think about the big 3s in New York, like Jonquel Jones, Breanna Stewart, and Sabrina Ionescu. I think about the big 3 out in Vegas with Chelsea Gray, A'ja Wilson, and Jackie Young. I think this could impact teams with duos. I could see this having an impact in Atlanta with Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray. I could see this having an impact in Phoenix with Alyssa Thomas and Satu Sabali. Now, granted, free agency isn't here, and a lot of these players may not remain on the same teams. But ultimately, what I'm trying to get across is that even though the increase has happened to the salary cap, teams are going to have to be very strategic and smart about how they build teams. And this honestly might mark the end of the super team era where you can stack teams with a bunch of different talent. Now, the good news is none of this is set in stone. The players mentioned from the Indiana Fever don't have to take the epic provision. We could see revenue go up, meaning that salary cap could go up across the league and therefore there'd be more money to play with. And honestly, we've seen people take deals to win before in other leagues. But it does have a lot of people on edge about how their team will look into the future. Now, there are so many more details to this new WNBA CBA that I just can't cover in a video. I'm going to link an ESPN article below written by Alexa and Kendra Andrews. These are people who are great journalists for the WNBA and were actually on the ground, if I'm not mistaken, during the negotiations. And we'll have to wait to see what happens in the future, what your team looks like, what my team looks like, and how everyone will be impacted by these new WNBA CBA negotiations. We'll get to see where players land, who decides to announce their facility next, and so much more. But at the end of the day, I'm just glad we're going to have a WNBA season, and I'm glad for all of you who have taken out the time to watch the first episode of W's in the Chat.